Welcome to the Wichita Real Estate Podcast presented by the Pinnacle Realty Group. This is your behind-the-scenes pass to anything and everything real estate in Wichita, featuring interviews with local industry leaders, market updates, and exclusive access to tips, tricks, and insight on navigating Wichita real estate. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wichita Real Estate Podcast, Episode 2. We're here today with our in-house associate broker and senior vice president for the Pinnacle Realty Group, Grant Farha. Grant, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today.
You bet. Wouldn't miss it.
Absolutely. Good. Okay, so diving into it here, I guess tell the audience, tell me, tell us a little bit about your background. Who is Grant Farha?
Sure. Native Wichitan. Been here all my life with the exception of a short stint in Arizona back in 2000, 2001 out there on business. Love this city. I've watched it grow. A lot of things happening now, of course, downtown and everywhere. Just excited to be a part of this city. It's been good for me. It's been good raising a family. I wouldn't want to be anyplace else.
Awesome. Cool. And so speaking of family, you've got a wife, a daughter, right? Excellent.
One dog, one daughter, and one wife.
Perfect. Okay. A standard question we ask every guest here, just because I love to tie things back locally, love to shop local, love to eat local, love everything going on from an entrepreneurship standpoint in Wichita. What's your favorite local restaurant in Wichita? You're probably going to hurt some feelings. I know you have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs that are in that space. You may hurt some feelings, but someone's got to win, someone's got to lose. So what's your favorite Wichita local hotspot?
Well, and I can appreciate that. There are a lot of great restaurants in the city, but I can honestly say one of my favorites going out for a good filet is Chester's. Yeah. Hands down.
You can't go wrong.
Nope.
There's not a bad thing on the menu there. Awesome. Cool. So obviously you're in real estate and you've been in it for many, many years, and we'll touch on that more in depth later in the episode, but how'd you get started? Like, is there a cool story? Was there a moment in your life where you said, I'm going to go into real estate, dang it, and this is why?
Well, and that is a great question. So when I went out and got my license back in 2000, I was in the middle of a career change, had left the family business, went out on my own, did some stock market investing, and just realized I wanted something more. And I'd always had an interest in real estate. I thought, well, let me just go get my license and see what happens. Mm-hmm. Really, the rest is history.
Yeah.
I have an interesting story about real estate. So several years ago, actually many years ago, I was scheduled to go out on a listing appointment. Okay. And what's unique about it is that it was at 9 p.m. I had to work around the prospective seller's schedule. Mm-hmm.
Any real estate agents in the audience, you can probably relate.
Absolutely. I live on the east side. This appointment was way out past Goddard. Ooh. It was an acreage property, very unique property. The seller lived alone. I think he was widowed, and as I recall, and that what should have been maybe an hour appointment turned into about 2.5 hours. So consequently, I didn't get home till almost midnight. Uh-huh. That's dedication.
That's dedication. That's the kind of agent you should hire right there.
Absolutely.
Ones that'll be at your house until midnight way on the west side. Hopefully you packed your trail mix and didn't get lost going all the way to the west side.
I did.
Excellent. Very cool. So in all of your travels, in all of your years, not only in real estate, but it sounds like there was some other investing and being around the family business as well. So business in general, but more specifically to real estate, as this is the Wichita Real Estate Podcast. Walk me through a failure you had professionally or personally. Walk our audience through something, a roadblock you hit, a failure you had.
Sure. And I think I speak for probably many of us that we all have had failures in our lifetime. I'd rather actually focus on regret instead of failure.
Okay.
And having been in this business for so many years, I'm a huge advocate for investing in real estate. There's a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
My regret is that I didn't take my own advice.
You didn't buy more houses.
Right. And so, that's something that I can control and I can change and I plan to. But my regret comes from having not done that many years ago and having already built up a very nice portfolio.
Sure.
So, but there's still time.
Absolutely. There's always time. It's never too late. Cool. So obviously, going without diving into, what we offer here as a brokerage, kind of as a boutique team within a brokerage to be exact.
Sure.
Specifically to you, what's your unique value when an individual hires Grant Farha? What are they going to get better than they can get with me or with Tyson or with any other real estate professional in the city? What do you do better than anyone else?
I am proud of the thorough communication with my clients, timely communication, always responding to emails, text, voicemail. I'm a stickler on communication, and they see that early on.
Yep.
For me, that's really servicing the client, servicing their needs. And unfortunately, in our industry, we have a negative connotation. Realtors don't return calls, poor communicators.
Yeah, not all agents are created equal.
Correct. And I, early in my career, wanted to dispel that. And so I think it's worked very well for me.
Yeah, just in our interactions, just internally within the business, not as a client to agent relationship. I can definitely vouch to the audience that your communication is well above par. So,
appreciate that.
Aside from the one myth or negative connotation that you just mentioned, because I won't let you double down on that.
Right.
What's another myth? What's another positive or negative connotation? I mean, either way, both sides of the coin. What's a huge myth that you've seen either change or come about and then die off and then re-up again? What's a myth you want to debunk today for our audience?
Well, I think the way I would answer that is I think there's a misconception out there, not by everybody, of course, but kind of a general misconception that realtors in general make all this money. Oh, you charge, X amount per commission and so forth. What the consumer may or may not realize is that as an agent, we don't keep that 6%.
Right.
So we collect it, but we're going to pay out 3% to our co-oping agents.
Right.
Then of that 3% that we do retain, we start peeling off for
franchise fees,
everything,
administrative fees, marketing fees. I mean, there's so much that goes into each transaction. It's not a wide margin industry by any means.
So I think that's a myth out there that's been out there.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So kind of going, I know we kind of have an agenda that we have here, but kind of going away from that, because I'm wildly curious, and I've been wanting to ask you this for quite some time, but I figured now was a good time as ever. From an experience standpoint, because I've seen changes in the last 4.5, almost 5 years in how things are done, what the consumer wants, what the marketing is like. There's some technology disruptors. Amazon's involved, and now,
of course, a lot of changes. Redfin,
Zillow. I mean, there's so many changes. There's new brokerages that are starting that are more technology focused than others. A lot of the old hat brokerages, Remax, Berkshire Hathaway, Keller Williams, they're making a move because they see the importance of the technology. What have you seen globally, not just in the last 4 or 5 years, because I can see that, but the last 20 or 25 years? What has been the 2 or 3 biggest changes since you got your license in 2000, almost 20 years ago?
I honestly think one of the biggest changes is going from paper to paperless in transactions. And what's really been impactful is because we do most everything paperless, electronic signatures, there's an element of communication. There's that word again. There's an element of communication that gets lost. There's less and less of the one-on-one agent-client interaction.
Right.
And I think there's a lot that gets lost in that. That's probably the biggest dynamic or the biggest change that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think, just from not from a real estate perspective, just kind of in that one silo, but from a business and marketing standpoint, a broad communicate. Like if you get out communicated in today's world, you're going to lose, because whoever communicates the best and the most efficiently and the most quality and quantity, that's marketing.
I agree.
2020.
You bet.
And that's where things are going. That's who's going to win. That's who's going to last. So to your point, having that, that unique level of almost concierge communication with your clients is in some ways more difficult doing it electronically, because instead of you and I sitting down and going over the contract, I'm going to email you everything, and I've got to call you on the phone, and I have to walk you through things remotely off-site that I'm not there to take my finger and say this right here, this right here, this right here. I've kind of got to guide them through the contract process. But I know we pride ourselves on, setting that expectation up front, familiarizing our clientele with the documentation that we will later be sending you. So it's a lot seamless, a lot more painless of a transaction on our consumers' end. It's more work on our end up front, but that's our job.
I would agree with that, and as well as I do, that's kind of my moniker, set expectations. And that is so important, because if the client knows what to expect, then it makes the process that much easier for them, and they also understand.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's huge. We're hosting our homebuyer workshop this Thursday here at our office. If you haven't already RSVP'd, do it now. I think we have 1 or 2 spots left right now. We're almost all sold out. We have limited space. So do it right now if you haven't already. It's on our Facebook event page. Check it out.
Nice
Thank you. It's our podcast. We can advertise on it for free if we want to. So, okay. It's just an education piece, because there are so many moving parts. If you're not a real estate agent, it's hard to know where to start, who to trust, what to do, where to go, what's next. So really taking that extra step, that extra initiative to offer that to our clientele, both at the workshop and ongoing outside of it with each new client that we meet, or even an existing client who's been around the block before and has bought several houses with us or without us, who are a seasoned veteran of the home buying process. I'd say 8 times out of 10 they learn something new when an agent from our team sits down with them and kind of walks them through and guides them through the entire real estate transaction from start to finish.
I think that it's incumbent upon us, and especially within Pinnacle, to not underestimate what we think a buyer or seller knows.
Absolutely.
Even if they've done several transactions over the years.
Especially because it changes. If they bought a house 10 years ago, they have no idea what the market is like today. It's always ever changing, and unless you're keeping a finger on the pulse of it at all times, you're essentially left in the dark with new technologies, new neighborhoods. There's so much out there that can change year over year, that if you're not buying a house once a year, which 99% of the people don't do, we have the blessing and curse of doing this all the time and being involved in it every single day. So it's not as much of the dramatic change, at least in my opinion, to us when the market shifts or when there's new software or there's new technology, because we gradually saw it change. Whereas if you bought a house 10 years ago and you're assuming it's worth this amount because the market's been appreciating on average X amount of percent year over year, and you meet with someone like us and we open your eyes, it can sometimes be a rude awakening if you're not keeping a finger on the pulse. So education is huge, and I know we pride ourselves at Pinnacle here on really taking the time to educate our clientele on the front end, investing a lot of resources in different documentations. In this home buyer workshop we're doing, there's a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of energy, and a lot of dollars that go into those resources for our clients to have for an education piece, but every single penny and every single second of it is worth it.
Well, as realtors, I think we have an obligation to our clients. I really do. I think we have an obligation to them to teach them and educate them and coach them properly and give them good information.
I would agree. I could not agree more. So I know you and I talked off camera before we got on here. I'm really excited for the next question and for kind of the title of the episode. What 20 years in real estate will teach you is the title of this particular episode. So I want to know, you've been in the business for right at or almost 20 years. Two-part question. Question one, what does that mean to you?
Dedication. It's something that I love. I have a passion for.
Yeah.
And the old saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Well, that's what this is.
So you haven't worked for 20 years?
No, I've been just sitting on the side. But honestly, it's been a hugely rewarding career. I've learned a lot. I continue to learn a lot. No two deals are ever the same. Clients are different, houses, properties are different, everything's different. And so I think that's what allows people like me and others to remain in the business for so long, is that it constantly changes, and you don't get bored with it. You can't.
You can't? There's no way you can, not with everything always changing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've obviously got a passion for it. Anybody does anything 20 years at the highest of level that you've been doing it at for so long, you've got to have a passion for it. Yeah. You've got to have a passion for it to stay, in that upper echelon. So
I have a love-hate relationship with it too. Sometimes I love to hate it.
Yeah.
So
I understand that.
It's been great.
That's awesome. Yeah. So 20 years in real estate, that's what it means to you. What has it taught you?
First word that comes to mind, Lawton, is that it has taught me patience.
I can relate even after a fourth of the time in the business.
Well, when you've done thousands of transactions as I have, and you've met with that many people, just thousands of people,
right? All kinds of different temperaments and egos and personalities.
Everything.
You've got to be a chameleon. You have to be able to blend
100%.
into any environment in any transaction with any kind of person ever. You got to talk to the same salesperson the way you talk to the introverted engineer guy that's really analytical. You've got to be able to maneuver around every personality trait and still get your message across effectively and efficiently.
And still be liked at the end of it, especially if you're delivering bad news.
Absolutely.
The other thing that it has done for me, it has thickened my skin immensely.
That's the truth.
Yeah. You have to be able to not let certain negative situations or people that go negative on a transaction affect you personally. You just can't do it. You won't survive. So
you won't make it 20 years. No shot.
No
shot. Okay, cool. That's awesome. I've been wanting to learn that from you, ask you that question. That's another one that I wanted to ask for quite some time, but this was the perfect avenue to wait for it. I'm happy I did.
Sure.
That was an awesome answer. So anything else, I guess before we kind of wrap up, anything else that you thought I would talk about or ask you about today that you wanted to touch on before we hang it up?
I do want to say one thing. When I first got into the business, I worked almost exclusively with investors flipping properties, buying buy and hold rentals and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And the market shifted, and that whole part of the market changed. And so I had to quickly change how I conducted business.
Sure.
What type of clients I worked
Had to adapt.
for. Exactly. The word adapt is key. We have to, in this industry, be able to and be willing to adapt because the market will continue to change.
Right.
Right now, we're in a very strong seller's market.
That's right.
How we work within that market is going to be different than maybe 2 or 3 years from now when it turns into a strong buyer's market.
Right. As agents, it's like you're a professional athlete. I mean, you're only as good as your last at bat.
Correct.
It doesn't. The market doesn't care how much you sold last year. If the market's going to shift, the market's going to shift, and you can't do anything about it. You have to adapt. You have to improvise. You have to overcome the hurdles in the way, the new aspects of the market. You're only as good as your last at bat. You're only as good as your last deal.
That is so true.
And if you don't have another one, you're not any good.
Right.
Yeah, I always make the joke with the agents here on the team. If they don't have anything on the board, they're unemployed.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. That's the rather harsh kind of comical reality of it, but
it's the truth.
It is a reality nonetheless, that if you don't have anything on the board to close in the next 30, 60 days, you're unemployed. If you took the day off, you're kind of unemployed. So you didn't get paid that day.
That's right.
That's right. Cool. Now, so kind of piggybacking off that, not to drag it out and not to catch you off guard with anything, you've seen now probably 2 market shifts. One shortly after you got licensed in the early 2000s after the dot-com crash, and then you saw 2008, 2009. Do you see any similar trends now, any similar red flags? I know Wichita is a super conservative market.
It is.
And, I mean, when it was the worst of the worst in 08, 09, comparatively to some larger markets, it really wasn't that bad. So, I mean, like, the market corrected in Wichita. It never really crashed. So do you see another market correction on the horizon? If so, any specifics?
I think realistically we should expect a correction. I think that it's not going to be anything dramatic. I think it's going to be more of a slow correction or more of a balancing out of the market.
And you see it being more favorable to buyers then?
I think it's going to become a little bit more neutral.
Well, it certainly couldn't be any more favorable for sellers than it is now. So
that's so true. I think, though, where that shift is going to come into play is if and when interest rates start to rise. I think that's when we're going to start to see that shift or neutralization.
Yeah.
So
I would agree.
As far as a time frame, I don't know if that's 2 years out, 4 years out.
No one does. Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, no one knows.
So
very good. Very good. Any specific advice you want to give to our audience? Our audience is full of people from every walks of life. There are other agents in the audience. There are other mortgage professionals, home inspectors, people we work with, and then just everyday clients that are mine, that are yours, that are Drew's, that are Tyson's, that are from anybody's on the team, that are from anywhere and everywhere, from all walks of life. What does that piece of advice that you would want to give to our audience today?
I think that, everybody that you just mentioned are all homeowners or home sellers.
Right.
And I think that...
At some point.
Yeah. And I think, with the amount of realtors that are in our marketplace, there are a lot to choose from.
Yep.
And I think the advice that I would give is when you're going to select an agent, do a thorough interview of them. Ask them many questions. Find out about their experience, their knowledge. How long have they been in the business? How many transactions? Even if they say they've been in the business 20 years, but have only done 20 transactions,
right?
I'd run.
That's would definitely be a turnoff on.
But I just
on my end as well.
I think the advice is, because there are so many agents, do your due diligence.
Yeah,
and
do your research.
Yeah,
look into it. Yeah, I mean, there's 1,000 different dynamics that we could dive into as to why you should hire an agent versus what they say, and it's advertising versus marketing, and it's list price versus sales price. There's tons of dynamics that we could dive into, but you heard it here. Do your research. I mean, buyers shop for homes, agents or sellers shop for agents.
So true.
So true. Yeah, so true. Yeah, buyers shop for homes, sellers shop for agents. So true. So every guest at the end of our podcast episode, because we have reached the end, you get to ask our audience a question. You gave them advice. I asked you a ton of questions. Now it's your turn. You get to ask our audience a question. The only thing we ask is whenever we do post it and people on social media that are watching right now dive in and answer the question in the comments below the video, or they email us with their answer, or they direct message us with the answer. We only ask that our guests that are on the episode dive into those comments and answer the questions and interact with our audience. So
Love to.
What question do you have for our audience today?
I have one very simple but one very important question, and that is, we were talking about when you're shopping for an agent, what matters most to you in an agent? What's most important when you're making that selection?
I am excited to see some answers in there. I'm excited to see some answers in there, and I'm sure some other real estate agents that are watching right now are also excited because they can look in those comments, they can check it out. I have no problem with them diving in and getting market insight.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of competition for all of us.
You bet.
Awesome.
You bet.
Well, Grant, thank you again for joining us today.
Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for all the insight. Thank you for the expertise and
Bet.
all the updates and answering all my questions for us today.
Bet. Thank you.
Absolutely, Grant. Thank you, guys. This has been episode 2 of the Wichita Real Estate Podcast with our Senior Vice President for Pinnacle Realty Group, Grant Farha. Thank you, guys, for watching. Keep a lookout for the next episode coming the first week of January. Have a good one, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Wichita Real Estate Podcast. For access to even more information, join our Pinnacle Insider Club at cwichitahomes.com/insider.